Hello, you beautiful, wonderful YouTubers. How are you? Welcome to another action-packed videos full of ums and uhs, because that's how I roll. See? You know, people ask me every day, they say, Rod, which is my name, but it is a strange way to start a conversation. Rod, how do you keep up your energy to write so many marginally interesting books? Well, I'm going to tell you right now. Here's my secret. Gatorade and little pretzel nuggets filled with peanut butter. Gives me all the energy and pep I need to stumble through another day of existential terror. So, by the way, this is not like a used baggie. I didn't use it for something else and then put the pretzel things in there. All right. I have been bouncing around an idea for a while about doing a different kind of YouTube channel. Like still doing this one. Don't worry, you're not getting rid of me that easy. But I have a couple of partially completed works, novels, basically, that I've worked on and off on over the years that, one, I'd love to get some feedback from you guys about. And two, if I get some good feedback, I'm going to try to finish them and send them out into the universe. So I thought a good way to do that would be to do a YouTube channel. And I could just read some of my work and get feedback from you guys. Which I have to admit, in one way would be horribly terrifying. Because it could just be, this sucks. Why have I been wasting time on this? So, which are valid points. Valid. So I thought what I'd do is I'm going to read to you a little bit. I'm going to try to see if I can get through the whole chapter, but I don't want this to be too long. Hey, that's my catchphrase. This is going to be a short video. That's going to be on my tombstone. Along with and O. But I want to read to you a little bit from one of the works. And if you guys think this is something I should move forward with, I will set up a YouTube channel, link it up to this one, and start doing like maybe a chapter every few weeks or maybe a chapter a month and get some feedback, see what people think. And hopefully you enjoy this. So without any further ado, and with all my apologies for my ums and uhs and stumbling and stammering and all of that stuff, I'm not exactly what you would call the best narrator in the world. But without any further ado, let me adjust my mustache. Here's some here of the first chapter of a book I have been working on for several years now called In the Forests of the Night. And here we go. In the Forests of the Night by R.S. Belcher. 1. Millburn, New Jersey, June 2016. The old man's house resided on an acre of sparsely wooded lot in a cul-de-sac off of Pinewood Court. One of 7 houses on the cul-de-sac, the old man's place, 1898 Escher Court, was an unremarkable 3-story craftsman-style home with a detached 2-story garage. The only time anyone could recall seeing the old man was when he shuffled out to the mailbox every few weeks. A few recalled the weird bright lights dancing in the windows of the dark night once or twice. Maybe he left his TV on for company. There was never a car in the driveway. His neighbors often remarked when they gossiped about the elderly recluse at summer cookouts and pool parties. I think he's retired from that Weird Dynamics plant over in Trenton, Bob Bushner said, flipping, hissing burgers on his grill that was roughly the size of a compact car. I kind of took a peek in his mailbox, and he had some pension checks addressed from Weir. I've never seen him be in grocery. I've never seen him bring in groceries, never seen a Meals on Wheels person, a relative, anyone, Jenny Grabowski said, slurring a little after her third G&T. It's creepy, Bob said, gesturing for his son to fetch him another Coors from the cooler. How do we know he isn't some kind of child molester or serial killer or something? Oh, shut up, Bob, Jenny said. It's sad. He's all alone, rattling around in that old house. Hell, that house has been here since the early 50s. It was here before anything else on this street, Bob said. Kenny, 2 houses down, he said he heard the old guy built the cul-de-sac. Hell, the whole subdivision. But he's got a fortune buried in that basement in there, along with some bodies. Everyone on Escher Court was surprised when the old man's first visitors, one June morning, consisted of a caravan of black SUVs with tinted windows. The dark-suited men, their eyes hidden behind sunglasses, fanned out like a SWAT team, setting up a perimeter around the house, charging up the porch stairs and clustering around the front door with a battering ram and compact H&K MP5 machine guns appearing from under tailored suit jackets. The one man who walked instead of ran climbed the stairs, a tactical radio in his large hand. Perimeter secured, sir, a voice on the radio reported. Ken Witt keyed the radio as he stepped to the side of the breaching party on the porch and drew his Steyr M9A1 pistol. Witt nodded to his people manning the ram. Roger, Lemur Charlie. All perimeter units stand by, Witt said. Breaching party. Insertion into AO in 3, 2, 1, go. The front door swung open with a bang as the battering ram crashed into it. Witt's security team, like oiled specters, drifted into the dim, cluttered hall of the house, sweeping each corner of each room, making sure every shadow was only a shadow. Witt entered and looked around the hall. There were floor-to-ceiling bookcases. Each shelf was stuffed to overflowing with all manner of papers, stacks of magazines, boxes, mason jars, briefcases that were crammed beyond capacity with papers themselves, books, and a large specimen jar that contained the corpse of a 2-headed toad floating in a cloudy amber fluid. Everywhere Witt looked, there was some oddity, knick-knack, paper or journal. This, he sighed and muttered as his men spread out through the rest of the house, is going to take a while. It took roughly 20 minutes for the security team to perform an initial sweep of the house. It was unnerving, even to these men and women, most of whom were battle-hardened veterans who had seen their share of the shit. Every room, every corridor, every corner and shelf was stuffed with bizarre and seemingly unfathomable clutter. But that wasn't what set them on edge. It was something unnameable. There was a feeling of claustrophobia in the house, in its seemingly endless shadowed halls and still chambers, like being buried alive, forgotten, locked away in some nameless alien tomb. There were things far worse than dying, and this house felt like all of them. There was a hallway full of mounted payphones from various eras and countries, all of them broken. Opening a closet revealed silver, unlabeled, factory-sealed paint cans, dozens of them, neatly arranged and stacked. When pried open, the cans contained thousands of the small, bright yellow discs used to adapt 45 RPM records to a 78 RPM turntable. A small half bathroom on the 3rd floor was papered in old train schedules from the 1940s and had over 200-year-old bronze and crystal Pierre-Philippe Tomier chandelier worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, taking up most of the tiny water closet ceiling. A Wurlitzer jukebox converted into an aquarium and full of skeletal dead fish squatted in the corner of a room. The room's floor, walls, and ceiling were covered in thousands of glued-on Kennedy silver dollars. In the garage, they discovered a grease pit with stone stairs leading down to its floor. A vintage World War I biplane motor hung above the pit, suspended by chains. The pit itself was full of rotting cardboard boxes containing complete collections of Playboy magazines up until the early 1980s. Another room contained a collection of house windows and window frames suspended by piano wire, and hundreds of working televisions, Beta, VHS, and Laserdisc players from numerous eras. At the center of the room was a very old easy chair, its upholstery bandaged in many places with faded, foxed silver duct tape and old yellowed stuffing poked out unattended holes. It was as if someone had decided to take the mind of a schizophrenic and build a three-dimensional representation of it. Several of the security team, garbed in kitten and Kevlar, had reached the depths of the second floor of the main house when they heard the music echoing and mumbled through the jumble of the passageways. It was Frank Sinatra's version of Stormy Weather. It sounded scratchy, bumpy, skipping as it played on the old 1940s phonograph. On the wall above the record player was a framed needlepoint quotation. It said, "Only those who attempt the absurd will achieve the impossible. I think it's in my basement. Let me go upstairs and check." "This shit is creeping me the fuck out," one of the team, a former Army Ranger named Torillo, muttered into his throat mic as they moved down the hall towards the distinct sound of Old Blue Eyes. Torillo was the newest member of Team Alpha, back in the world less than a year or two from Afghanistan. Malcolm Rollinoak spared a glance at the kid and frowned. You never wanted to go into the shit with anyone who you weren't 100% on. Malcolm glanced to his commanding officer, and she got him without either having to say a word. The squad leader, Elizabeth Favor, patted her teammate on the shoulder, but never moved her eyes or MP5 off the room at the end of the long hall where the noises were coming from. "Stay cool," Liz said to Torillo. "Whatever it is, we got this." The 5-person squad advanced in a staggered formation toward the end of the hall, which seemed too long to be contained within the outside dimensions of the house. Liz glanced over at the faded, peeling wallpaper and noticed there were framed photographs of Civil War soldiers, maimed and crippled, all along the length of the hallway. She felt her chemically calmed nerves begin to unravel and fray a bit. "This fucking place," she said. Liz and Torillo were on point. Favor raised a clenched fist, a silent command for the rest of the squad to hold. Frank Sinatra's velvet voice drifted down a tunnel of time and space, both soothing and terrifying in its dreamlike quality. A hiss and a click came over the squad's headphones. "This is Charlie team. We got bodies. Holy fuck, we got a lot of bodies in here. They're really old, like mummies. Oh, Christ. I ain't seen nothing like this shit. What did this to them?" Liz summoned her courage and nodded to Torillo. The 2 former soldiers stepped into the room at the end of the seemingly endless hall of atrocity, their weapons sweeping back and forth, ready to open up on whatever monster this madhouse had conjured to confront them. The room was filled with Chinese lanterns, hundreds of them, all different shapes, sizes, and colors, all lit and glowing like a galaxy of multicolored paper suns. The floor was covered in a rain of postage stamps from various eras. At a wooden table in the center of the room, an old man sat, straight-backed. He was emaciated, weighing perhaps 80 pounds, soaking wet. He looked to be in his late 80s, with long, dingy gray hair that fell to below his shoulders, and an equally unkempt and long, full beard. Liz couldn't help but notice that he wore no clothes. The whole table for him was piled up with albums of stamps. The old man licked a purple stamp that held the likeness of Queen Victoria. He carefully affixed it to the page in an open album. Once he was satisfied with the mounted stamp, he looked up at the 2 security agents, their machine guns pointed at him. "I think I remember this," the old man said. It was after dark before Witt allowed his employer to enter the house. Large electrical lights on tripods illuminated the whole property. Generators hummed, and Witt's security people, along with elements of the New Jersey State Patrol, were keeping the neighbors, gawkers, and reporters well back behind barriers. Witt prided himself on his thoroughness, and he wanted to be sure everything was safe. Witt waited until the private hazmat team had given the all clear that nothing on the property posed a biological, chemical, or radiological threat to Mr. Weir. "What's this?" Gerald Weir asked his head of security as Witt slapped a nylon harness on the billionaire. The harness was like the one Witt was wearing. Each harness had a steel cable attached to it that was connected to the other end of a winch on the front of a military Humvee parked in the yard. "Our science people have some concerns that the house is somewhat extra-dimensional," Witt said matter-of-factly, as if he were discussing the score of a baseball game. "Everyone, especially you, sir, needs a lifeline going in there in case the place suddenly folds up on itself and vanishes." Weir smiled and looked at Witt. "Ken, is there anything that phases you?" "You pay me vast sums of money to be blasé," the large man said. "Let me take you in. There are a few things you'll want to see in here." The remains were laid out in what once had been a dining room on the first floor, off from the entrance foyer, which was crammed with shelves. The dining room had been converted into a gallery of mannequin heads. Each had been modified with parts from transistor boards of old portable radios, fragments of mirrors and dentures. Each head rested in its own cubby. All four walls had the cubby shelves, like a collection of cyborg death masks. There was a large mirrored disco ball silently rotating on the ceiling above the gallery of heads. The ball had 3 small ultraviolet lights aimed at it, causing scattered glowing purple light around the room and making the pale plastic heads glow. Everywhere Weir looked, dead plastic eyes looked back at him from ghastly, luminescent faces. There were 11 body bags arranged on the floor. Some of Weir's technicians hovered over partly opened bags, taking skin, bone, and hair samples. "When we discovered the bodies around the main house, we contacted our legal department," Witt explained. "They got a spin and liability control team down here from Manhattan, and then they called the cops. There are dozens of sets of remains. Most are skeletal. A few are mummified. Some of the remains don't look human, possibly animal, but not like any animal remains I've ever seen. Our medical people say it looks like they probably died back in different times, between the late 50s and early 70s. Some were violent deaths, bad burns combined with high impact damage. Others were shot, stabbed, maybe tortured. A few look like suicides. We found one in a pile under the noose they used to hang. We found one in a pile under the noose they had used to hang themselves. It looks like the old man just left them wherever they died for all these decades. I guess that might explain the few thousand pine tree-shaped car fresheners we found hanging in one of the bedrooms." "You think he killed them?" Weir asked. "Abducted them, maybe? Kept them drugged here until he was ready to murder them?" Witt shrugged. "Any idea who he is? Why he sent me that crazy, rambling letter?" "It would help if we could examine the letter he sent you," Witt remarked. "I hope you kept the crazy old geezer away from the cops," Weir responded. Witt allowed the change of subject to pass unchallenged. His employer was a man with a lot of secrets, and Witt was well paid, very well, to protect those too. "We did," the security chief said, looking down at the dark green bags on the floor. He had a momentary flashback to an aircraft hangar in Qatar back during the war. He blinked and dismissed the troubling memory. He was on the job. "Evac'd him out of here a good hour before we called the authorities. He says we already know his name. He had no ID or paperwork on him, but the bedroom with all of the air fresheners seems to be his. I found an expired New Jersey driver's license from 1987 in there. The name, Louis Spence. We're running his name, his fingerprints, and DNA right now. We're doing the same for the remains. I'm assured by our people that we'll be getting information back tonight." "Your usual efficient work," Kenneth Weir said. This everything you wanted me to see?" "No," Witt said. "I saved the best for last. It's upstairs." The octagon-shaped chamber was on the 3rd level of the house. Its hardwood floor was darkly stained and highly polished. Thick red curtains were gathered up and tied back in corners of the room on either side of a small raised stage. Weir and Witt entered through the set of double doors at the end of the room. There was a freestanding chalkboard between the stage and the doors. It was covered in a wild scrawl of words, formula, symbols, and proofs. Weir's eyes caught the words Project Sunwall in large, frantic letters on one side of the board. He paused, visibly stunned. He looked to Whit. He knows about Sunwall? How the hell can he possibly know about Sunwall? Whit shrugged again. It was his patent response for most things he couldn't answer specifically. I'm afraid I was never cleared to know a great deal about the project, Ken said. But I understand it was an ultra-black program under the Department of Scientific Security. Maybe this old fellow was connected to the intel community. That might explain some of his idiosyncrasies. Sunwall was a complete clusterfuck, Weir said. The principals involved don't even remember the particulars of the program anymore. They had their memories chemically flushed. Poor Nathan Seaton ended up in a mental hospital over Sunwall. Others ended up dead, disappeared. It's a nightmare. Weir walked over and tried to take in all the rambling data on the board. He saw in a different corner another name written as prominently as Sunwall. It said, Red Emperor Joe. Isn't Red Emperor Joe some kind of comic book or something? Weir asked. Ken nodded to a series of long cardboard comic book boxes stacked near the right side of the board. High weirdness, the security chief said. I've read them since I was a kid. You were a kid and you read comic books? Weir said with a grin. I just thought some Japanese war god kind of made you or something. It's kind of like Mad Magazine if it was written by Robert Anton Wilson and Albert Camus, Whit said. Apparently the old fellow was a fan too. He's got a complete collection in mint condition here. Weir rubbed his face as he scanned the chalkboard. Something about a lot of the writing seemed familiar to him. Different people had written the material on the board, which included mentions of tantric telegraphs, telepathic communication towers, and something called a Koba telepresence soul suit. Weir recognized several of the styles of handwriting, but that just made this make less and less sense. He wished Dave Harlan was here. Harlan would snap his fingers and talk to himself a bit and then explain everything to Weir, but he wasn't here. They hadn't talked directly in years since the train wreck that had been Project Sunwall. I want every bit of this videotaped and photographed, Weir said, and then we're taking the board with us back to R&D at Slumberland. Already done, Whit said, slipping a Red Emperor Joe comic back into its Mylar sleeve and returning it to its proper place in one of the comic long boxes. Transcribed, too. Weir began to circle the chalkboard and saw there was more writing on the back. Before he could begin to examine it in greater detail, he paused and saw what was up on the center of the stage, wrapped in warm, bright lights. That, Whit said, is what I thought you'd really want to see. The device up on the stage resembled a man, Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man. He was made of wood, metal, wires, and crystal, its arms and legs outstretched and joined to a great ring. Weir slowly climbed the stage and examined the machine, gingerly touching it, like a man seeking proof he wasn't dreaming. It was real. The smooth wood and polished brass and gold warm under the strong lights. How could he? Weir fumbled for words. This looks exactly like the one we found, Spear's original. He traced his fingers along the edge of the great ring that encompassed the faceless figure. Here, it has exactly the same indentation and the exact same spot in the copper plate as ours. And here, this knot in the wood, it is exactly the same place. How could a reproduction be that? The billionaire on the stage turned to Whit, below on the floor of the room. I want this shipped to Slumberland as well, right now. I want it radiocarbon dated, laser measured. Hell, try to DNA test the wood. Every test available. I want to know how it's the same as ours, and any way down to the micron that it's different. Thy will be done, Whit said. Elizabeth Favor, one of Whit's senior security staff and squad leader of his alpha team, walked into the room. Liz was a very thin woman, maybe a little too thin, Whit reflected, with dirty blonde hair that fell to below her shoulder blades, and her bangs fell just above her brown eyes. She handed Whit a sheath of faxed papers she had retrieved from the mobile communication command post. Weir's people had set up in the cul-de-sac. These just came through, boss, Liz said. Liz nodded to her boss's boss up on the stage, circling some bizarre sculpture, and exited the room. Weir didn't even notice Liz's passing, transfixed by the machine. Witt scanned the papers, frowned, and flipped through them, seeming to double and triple check what he was reading. Weir came down from the stage and joined his security chief. I want to see that bedroom you told you. I want to see that bedroom you said the old man was using, Weir said. What is it? We got back some initial information on our mysterious Mr. Spence, Witt said. Fingerprints and DNA analysis. Seems Spence isn't our old man's real name. Who is he? Weir asked. What's his real name? Ken handed him the papers. Gerald Weir, Witt said. Fingerprints and DNA are a solid match. Weir looked from the papers to the calm, Buddha-like face of his bodyguard. He's you. So that is our chapter 1. I stumbled over some shit and I caught some typos that I'm going to have to go back and fix, which is why I paused a few times. I was like, ah. So, let me know what you think. Let me know if you would be interested in a channel where you got to hear every chapter of that. And if I got some good feedback on it, good response, I'll keep going on it. It's about a third of the way to a half of the way done. So tell me what you think. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It does me a world of good. We're almost at 200 people, and that will be so awesome. We'll do something special when we get to 200. If you like these videos, share them on your social media and encourage other people to check out the channel. If you do subscribe, click on that little bell so you can get notifications for when we do videos. That's the royal we. Don't forget the secret to massive, big writing energy, Gatorade, little pretzel nuggets full of peanut butter. Thank you so much. I hope this wasn't like a complete and total waste of your time. We'll get back to stuff more related directly to writing on the next video. I am going to, again, try to see if I can get another channel set up for this, if you guys think it's something worth doing. And I hope to see you on the next video, guys. Take care. Have a great night. Thanks.